Hi, everyone. My name is Giacomo Masi. I'm the creative director of Shattered Heaven from Leonardo Production. And today we are here again with a very, very special guest that we would like to, to introduce for, since we both did card games and even though they are very different, they are very similar in the quality because they are very, very high quality. But, I'll let my friend talk on my behalf on this part.
Okay. So my name is Enrique Dreyer, and I'm the creator of Aces and Adventures, a rogue-like deck builder that kind of uses playing cards for mana and to launch poker-powered attacks. And I had the opportunity recently to play a little bit of Shattered Heaven, and I started playing it thinking, okay, well, I got to make sure that I play this in advance before the video so that I'm not completely clueless. And I started playing it, and the hours just went by, and I ended up beating the entire first, I guess it's the first kind of campaign of the game, and enjoyed it very much. So the first thing that came to mind when I started seeing it is that there's a sort of East meets West quality to the artwork that I thought was very interesting. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what the inspirations behind the really interesting artwork were?
Yeah, basically, our team is multi-ethnical. Our artist especially comes from all over the world. Basically, we are not a very big team because basically we are 15, but in reality, we were half during the main part of the project. Some of our counselor, we put a lot of effort on music, art, these kind of things, because these are our distinctive things. Before we did Dry Drowning, which is a very different project, we were like in four that project, and this one, the scope was bigger. And the thing is about Shattered Heaven is a clash of cultures at the start, even though those cultures are different, of course, from the real ones, because we wanted to create a dystopia, again, like the old game, and each culture needed to be very realistic and approachable and enjoyable, of course, and each of them need to feel very different but also very interesting. And in order to create, the game is really dark. It's a dark fantasy game, but this time we decided to go into a very colorful approach towards the art style, in order to tell a very grim story, but with a very vivid approach, okay, on everything that you see. So the monsters are extremely colorful. Rim, which I have here, it was our one of our main artists which did all the monsters, and all the sprites. Renato, Giulia, and Salin are the main artists, and each of them has a very distinct art style. When they mixed all together, we created a very unique melting pot, if you want to call it like that way. And so that we had, even when we started to think about every different culture inside of the game, each of us started to share what their culture was about, or we started searching about other things we were really into in order to create something that could feel real again, and with a very high candy approach on the art style, so that people could actually see the game and say, wow, this looks like, a very colorful comic book or a very dark, very cute dark fantasy setting.
Nice. So you're saying it was basically a result of what the artist brought into the project. This is kind of what manifested.
Yeah. Basically, our vision is like we start with a story or an idea, or like my approach towards gaming is like we take a concept or like a couple of words, and from that point onwards, we started world building all around those concepts for like freedom, justice, or faith, or crisis of faith, or like, for example, for Shattered is the paradox of omnipotence. That's a very hard word, and like the Übermacht, or basically the superhuman from Nietzsche. And so from those two concepts came Shattered Heaven, and people were really into the story. Every artist knew about the story, the characters, and they start to develop their vision. We don't have just one vision. We have a starting idea, and everyone had a little bit of their soul or their artistical behalf on the project. And that's what makes our games unique, in my opinion.
And so why don't you tell me a little bit more about the paradox of omnipotence? What exactly is that?
Basically, it's like the old concept of the game. I will try to explain it without going into spoilers.
Okay.
Because basically the overall game is all about an holy war, or like rather humans killed God for whatever reason. We don't know why at the start of the game. And as for punishment for that, each human is doomed to death at the age of 40. And, every human lost their capability of replicating their fertility. And in order to be able to endure, each tribe, the world is divided into 4 tribes and a huge tower, which is basically the Pope is in there, the holy figure of this world is placed in there. And every 10 years, they have some sort of a battle royale between each culture. And they have a Vestal comes out, which is basically a girl with some unique thing, like color of the hair, something in their eyes, or superhuman strength, something that tells she's the Vestal. And alongside with their guardians, they need to do trials, sacred trials, and the one who wins all the trials give the possibility, the chance to their tribe to replicate or basically give birth to new childs for 10 years.
Okay.
And of course, if you keep on failing, you go extinct. And the paradox of omnipotence goes to the fact that the concept is like, if God create, this is very difficult to explain in English, but if God creates something which is so heavy that it's impossible to move, and the same God created something that not even God could move in reality. So how can God create something that he himself can't move?
Yes.
Okay, that's the concept.
Right.
And that's exactly the base of the game. It's like the paradox of something that was bestowed upon humanity, and in order to not be overcome them, but at the same time, you need to overcome this kind of trial. The entire game is all about the crisis of faith, and a very, very important thing about Shattered Heaven in every game that we make is that it's a shape your own adventure kind of game. So basically, you have 3 possible endings in the game, and the cool thing is that the final dungeon will be completely different depending on the choices that you make. Right. So the final boss is different. And of course the story will change dramatically with all the choices, even on the from the start to finish. But the last dungeon is completely different, so that adds a lot of replayability. And of course, depending on what choice you make, you may go towards faith, freedom, or justice, for example, without going too spoilerish. But it's never a good or bad thing. It's almost everything is about gray. It's we don't want to create a game in which you go the paragon or the villain each time. No, it's more like what is your sense of justice? What do you think is the best way of doing that?
Right.
And that's our approach.
Makes sense. So what's the foundation of your morality, basically?
Exactly.
So is that going to relate to the 3 characters? Those 3 paths?
Yeah. So some way, somehow,
okay.
Yes.
Are there other playable characters? I've only played the first 3, so.
Not for now, because basically in the game you play as the Eastern tribe, is basically the tribe of Ashram, which takes inspiration from the Greek mythology. Basically, they are something in between of Eastern tribe Greek, because each tribe is a mixture of many different cultures. It's not like East against West. No, absolutely. It's not. They are not real cultures. Of course, they are made up. And for now it's just that. But of course, if the game goes as we hope, we want to do DLCs or new adventures with the other characters and the other tribes, so that you can leave the game from another point of view. Right. But for now, yes, it's like basically you choose a path, and each ending will, each path will be more towards a certain character or how the character changes, because the protagonist at the start she's not very, kind, likable. At the start, is a very harsh character and not very likable. Yeah, and then how she changed depends on you, on the actual player, and how do you think she will actually behave. But each character as well, of course, they will change a lot depending on what you choose.
Right. Well, I'm just hoping that if I choose the options to open up and everything and kind of soften her up, that she doesn't lose her washboard abs.
No, absolutely. She would, one thing about the game is like every artist, this is a very fun fact, is like all of our artists wanted beefy girls from the start, you know?
That's right. I
They're
noticed.
like, we need to do realistic, that they are warriors, so
Yeah.
they should be.
Yeah,
There's
no,
just one
they fit
Vestal.
the role.
It's not very beefy, but because she has magic, you know? Every
Sure.
other Vestal is like super beefy because, you know, they train for war.
Well,
They
yeah.
can't be, you know, this.
When
We try to be realistic.
When I ran into the second Vestal, the one that's not the kind of Romani style, the one that has the black hair, but the other one, she's like standing like this, and I see, okay, well, she looks like kind of beefy, and then she, like, her actual character comes onto the screen, and she's like really beefy. Like, well, I was like, oh my god. Yeah, it was
Yes,
funny.
we wanted to create very unique characters,
Yeah.
again, not stereotypical kind of girls or
Yeah.
characters, so that you could actually feel like, oh god, this feels very unique, you know, very realistical, or more like, wow, this is so cool. It's not like the stereotypical super heroine, which
Right.
is super beautiful without the armor or stuff
Right,
like that. Yeah,
right.
we wanted to create something.
Yeah, makes
more-
sense. That they fit their
Absolutely.
role, so that was good. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the gameplay now. Now, one of the things that first came to mind was, and I wanted to be clear about this for people who haven't gotten to experience the game, is like those three characters basically represent three decks. And to me, what it felt like was almost like if you were talking in Slay the Spire kind of terms, it would be like you're playing all the three decks at once. You have three characters, and you're fighting the enemies that way. You get to see what the enemy's going to do next, if they're going to buff up, if they're going to do an AoE attack, or if they're just going to attack one of your guys. So you can kind of respond to that. What were the inspirations for the gameplay? Was Slay the Spire a big inspiration?
Absolutely. The Slay the Spire one was one of the biggest inspiration alongside the Darkest Dungeon, because basically my desire from the start was to create an hybrid between Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire, because because the thing is like, or like for example, Gwent, the single player experience of Gwent, for example, you know, the campaign. Because of course we do multi-branching games, so I wanted to have the story to do Slay the Spire, but also had the factor of reduce the RNG, basically the randomness, by saying, okay, you make your own initial deck because you unlock cards. The more you go into the game, you keep on unlocking cards, so you can make a starting build for each character. So basically, let's say one character is all about milling the deck, or changing cards, or the destroying cards from the deck, or optimizing damage, or is like all attack, all defense. And you make your starting deck, and you also have a skill tree for each character, which has three different approaches. So each character it's not like one character is always the tank. No, each character can become a tank. Each character can become a DPS or a support. And the very cool thing is that each character has his own mechanics. So it's like, as you said, Slay the Spire, but it's like the three characters with three completely different way of playing the game. Each character has keywords, the way of approaching. And then the very fun thing, in my opinion, is that it's just like Slay the Spire. When you do the dungeon after events, it's like Slay the Spire, but it's a dungeon crawler. So it's not like the Slay the Spire when you see the overall map. You go in tile by tile, basically. And like in Etrian Odyssey, if you play something like that, a classic dungeon crawler. And the thing is that after each fight, you do drafts. But just like Slay the Spire, you have three cards, but this time you need to take all three, because each card needs to go to a character, and they will be removed at the end of the dungeon. Some cards are adaptive, so they have a different effect depending on the character you give them. That's a very neat thing. And of course, the cards will change depending on the dungeon, because the draft, the pool will change depending on the dungeon that you go, so that you need to keep practicing and changing your strategy depending on the pool that you have. And that's had a lot of replayability, because of course the dungeons are never the same, the events are random, the cards are random. So basically you need to adapt. You have a starting strategy, so you're not relying on RNG, but you need to adapt each time. That's the twist, the new thing about the game.
And let's talk about the enemies then. The inspiration for the enemies, did you get any inspiration from like Dark Souls, Elden Ring sort of thing? Because I saw especially that one like deer or elk or something that then also has like another bouquet of hooves at the top. And then the ladies holding their heads just gave me a very like Dark Souls vibe.
Yeah, we basically took inspiration from everything related to dark fantasy, and because we are really into that kind of style, the Souls-like game were a huge inspiration, but also mythology a lot, or like Shin Megami Tensei, for example, was a huge inspiration. Demons from the Shin Megami Tensei, and a lot of different. Again, we took every dungeon is themed around a culture and a theme overall. And by a theme, I mean, for example, the first dungeon is Naraka. Is it's supposed to be hell, but actually it's paradise. It's a fake paradise. You go basically the world is barren. The real world is not very beautiful, and you go into hell and you discover that hell is basically a paradise, but it's populated by demons or very strange creatures.
Yeah.
And so you have, as you said, you have nymphs, but they are, monstrous nymphs, or you have like trees, which are half deer, half tree, or something like that. We took inspiration from Greek mythology, Eastern mythology, because of course it's called Naraka, so it's basically the hell, and this kind of, and all of this again, this mixture of cultures and the ideas of our artists, which are incredible monsters, were made by Rim, and it was our, once she showed me the first monsters, I said, oh God, these are incredibly cool and innovative. And I think they are one of the best things because they look extremely unique, because they are very colorful, unlike like Dark Souls, which are very grim, but they are very spooky and attractive ones.
Yeah, they're nice.
But yeah, we took inspiration from the Souls-like game.
I also liked a lot there was a little touch that I pointed out in the video that I had previously done, in which there was flowers in the background, multicolored flowers in the background in this place that we're talking about here, the sort of paradise-like hell. And they faintly had sort of the look of a skull, each flower. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah, that was from Salin, because basically she searched flowers that are like those, they exist. Flowers like those exist in the real world. And we did a lot of research around the word building. And again, that's thanks to Salin, Tim, and the others, basically, and Julia. And we had a lot of, real touch from real things that are really spooky. And how can we actually represent this fake paradise, so flowers, beautiful flowers with faces, that's the paradox we're talking about,
right?
And the game is full of these kind of things.
Yeah. And so the last point that I'd like to ask about, one quick aside, is I do like the way you represent the specking, the way that they have these sort of constellations that you're doing, and each of them are unique. I like that part, but I wanted to ask, and I know you said you've taken inspiration from many different places, but I also got a sort of Fire Emblem vibe from the way that the characters talk to each other, the way you can go talk to them in their quarters and kind of develop the relationships between them. Of course, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any like permanent deaths or anything here, but did you get any inspiration from Fire Emblem?
Yeah, Fire Emblem and Persona, basically the social link system. Even though we don't have a social link system or like a support system from the Fire Emblem, in which you have because they bond together. It's more like you do it each time you rest at a bonfire, an altar of Vesta it's called, or you go in the barracks, or before you go in the dungeon, you have a discussion between the characters. This is because the narrative part of the game is extremely important. You can just skip it if you are not into the more world building stuff. If you just want a deck building game, you can do it. We are also planning on a roguelike, pure roguelike mode for after launch. But yes, we took heavy inspiration from those, especially because they tend to create situation in which you care about the characters, and basically you discover their backstory little by little. You unlock new codex entries. So yeah, that was you got the point.
Okay,
absolutely.
good. Yeah. Hitting back on the paradox that we were talking about of omnipotence. I've actually thought about this before, and I remember when I was like 14, I had like conversations with people very aggressively, right, when you're young and you're trying to figure things out. But basically what I've settled on is, as far as that paradox is concerned, is that we are the result of that paradox.
Exactly. You got to the theme of the game.
Okay. All right, great. I just wanted to see if I was getting it.
Yeah, you got exactly the point. The thing is that you are the paradox that is going to destroy or support the same idea.
Right.
And that's why you do Ubermacht again, the Superman and comes out, because basically you are the one who decide your fate, and you can actually transcend your inner divinity, depending on what you choose, or you can betray it and become something else. That's the theme of the game. Yeah, you got it perfectly.
Okay. Well, very interesting. And I just want to put this on video record that I was promised a key for the full game. So
Absolutely. No. You will have it. I swear. You have my word of honor.
Okay.
You have it.
All right. Well, great. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we close this out?
Of course. Yeah, if you please wish list both the games on Steam,
Yeah.
when you have the chance, and please check out both of the Kickstarter pages, because they are both excellent projects, and support your indie games, because we care, and we plan to do great ideas that are outside the main market, but they are all extremely fascinating. So if you have time, check them out.
Great. And if you're watching this,
thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. And thank you for watching.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye-bye.